Welcome, everybody. I'm happy to start this brief seminar conference on a very interesting topic entitled Women and Winter Sports in Europe. So I know that I have students here studying governance of the European Union, so it's a pleasure to have you here. The way we will organize this brief seminar is to talk about topics such as gender balance, gender representations, and various opportunities across Europe, and with a particular theme of sports for obvious reasons, winter sports, because now that the Winter Olympics has just concluded, I think it's a nice topic. It's a nice idea to cover these specific topics. I'm particularly happy to have here Federiga Bindi, who is the principal investigator of empowering women in winter sports, which is a Erasmus Plus finance program that covers exactly the topic of gender representation in Europe and the role that Europe has and how to empower women in different activities, including, of course, winter sports. I think the best way is to, I'm not in a position to introduce properly the speakers of this panel. So I think I give the floor to Federiga Bindi to introduce the speakers, and then we'll start with the specific topics here. So
exactly. I'll just say good morning, everyone. Morning to those that are following us online, which is quite a lot. And I'll just say a couple of, so this is one of the closing events of a project that is called EWAS, Empowering Women in Alpine Skiing. And Sasa has been with me with the project since the beginning, while Ale and Sarah were nice enough to join for the conference. And up there you have Sophia, who's also been us with since the beginning. And the whole project starts because when I went back to alpine skiing after 30 years or so, I noticed that nothing had changed. Extremely misogynous. Even today, I was listening to the radio, my son, national ski team coaches, and I'm always the mom. I'm formally a coach, just call me what I am, right? So I decided either I complain about it or we do something to change, right? And so this is it, and Sasa will present the research she and her team did about women in alpine skiing, why they quit coaching, right? Now, so we have this exceptional panel. I'll go from the left to the right, if it's okay, and up to the top. So Sarah Lewis, so we have 3 Olympians here. Sarah Lewis is number 1. She's been Secretary General of FIS, International Ski Federation. She's also managing the Olympians, the Olympians, whoever went to the Olympics is part of a network, and she's managing that. And so she brings a lot of, and she will talk about experience on the field as a top leader in alpine ski. Alessia Mosca, it's from here, from Milan. She's been a member of a national parliament, member of the European Parliament. She was the one who sponsored the Mosca Golfo law, so the law that introduced women on board and then worked on the directive, and now is on the board of Crédit Agricole and teaches at Sciences Po. You know your professor, Fabio Franchino, is professor for those who are at home. He's professor of political science in the University of Milan. And our host here, to my left, Sasa Pisot, is also a former Olympian, member of the national team, yes. But she works at probably the institute that studies skis most. In Slovenia are very serious about studying skiing. So she is from a science research center in Slovenia, and they are the ones that since ever have been studying ski, not only as a sport, but from dynamics and she led, as I said, this research. And then up on top we have Sophia Gritsis, who is Greek Olympian. She is also a coach and a professor of physical education. So the panel will start with Alessia, giving us a framework, and then we will go to Sasa to explain to explain the research that we did, and then we will go on the field with Sarah and Sophia. And with this, I stop.
Okay, before a brief incipit before Alessia speaks. I don't know whether you have a slide there, but we'll talk about the role of women and gender representation in Europe. We will cover this topic in greater detail, but the only thing that I can say that things have been improving moderately, thanks to some leaders, including the one on my left here, that have made sure that there is a balanced gender representations in various topical institutions, including in the European Parliament. We will cover that in greater detail. The representation of women in the European Parliament is still not yet, let's say, as representative as it should be, but there's been a significant improvement over time. I think now about 47% of the MEPs are female, if I'm right. But back in the 70s and 80s, it was 20%, so it was very, very low. So things have been improving, at least in terms of descriptive representation. It doesn't necessarily mean that that lead to true effective policies, because there's still a minority, of course, within these topical institutions, but things have been improving. Thanks also to the activities of someone like by the name of Alessia Mosca, on my left here, because she played a crucial role in ensuring that women are properly represented, not only in public institutions, but also in private institutions. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Fabio. Thank you, Federiga. Thanks for the co-panelists. I'm very happy to be here, and I have to tell the truth, as Federiga invited me to this very interesting conference, I told her that I could for sure talk about diversity, empowering women, but I can't say anything about sport, especially winter sport. I just ski for fun, but but she assured me that I can set somehow the general environment of why empowering women is a topic that can apply everywhere in every field. And so I will try to tell you what, in my experience, what I tried to do using the powers and the possibilities that I had for in a period, and I'm continuing doing in different roles and positions, because I completely share the fact that it's important to continuously make an effort in improving in a situation where we are now, where anything is taken for granted, especially in gender issue, in diversity, and we see that for every step that we have done forward, there are risks of doing many steps backwards. So it's something that is need to be continuously taken with careful attention, and is always a challenge. So I wanted to, so that the idea is to use my few minutes to talk about the law. So what I've done, the major act that I could do, leaving somehow an impact to the society, has been what has been mentioned by Federiga and Fabio on the law that introduced the gender quota in Italy, and I will tell you something about that in a few moments. But since Fabio introduced this representation in the European Parliament, I would like also to add something that I have also done while I was member of the Italian Parliament, because what I've tried to do is not only to focus on one single piece of legislation, and by the way, legislation is not the only way through which we empower women and we empower diversity, because there are many other things that need to be done, and we cannot fix everything by law. anyhow, law is one of the instruments that we can use. And while I was member of the Italian Parliament, I introduced an amendment that passed to modify the electoral law. I don't know if you remember that, but to modify the electoral law for the European Parliament in Italy that introduced the triple preference. In the sense that before this amendment to the electoral law, we could express three different preferences without gender balance. And then after this modification of the electoral law, we imposed the fact that it was compulsory in expressing three preferences, at least to have one from the different gender. And from that moment onward, the representation from the Italian country, so from the Italian members of the European Parliament, dramatically improved. So that meaning that in some cases, legislation can really change the overall situation. And that is particularly true for the so-called Golfo-Mosca law that introduced the gender quota in board of directors of listed company and state-owned companies. And the reason why we introduced and we decided to work on this aspect of the Italian political and social situation was because we were in a very, very negative situation, to use an euphemism, because before the law, so up to 2010, because the law is relatively new, it entered into force in 2012. And before that, so for the beginning of the 20,000, we still had in board of directors in Italy a percentage of around 5–6% of women, and that was one of the sectors where the women were largely underrepresented. Without any significant change in the decades before. And so we decided that due to the fact that this sector, this position were highly visible and highly powerful some way, this could have been also culturally something to change in order to move the cultural imaginary and to change also the mainstream, the cultural mainstream, considering the board of directors a place where women were still such a minority. And so we worked a lot on the proposal of introducing these gender quotas. I don't enter into the details for not being so long, but what we at the end obtained was the introduction and the approval that was something particularly something peculiar somehow, because it was one of the few proposals coming from the parliament. So it was not a government proposal. I just wanted to remember that at that time the prime minister was Silvio Berlusconi, and so meaning that the climate was not exactly with the priority of gender diversity still. So for this reason, but in any case, we succeeded in making this law approved by a vast majority, and we imposed this law that is one of the strictest around Europe and around the world, in the sense that we obtained a 30% quota of women in board of directors. And with a very, very strong enforcement, in the sense that we introduced also quite a heavy fee, and after a few months, we imposed the annulation of the nomination of the board. And so it has been considered one of the strongest examples around the world of this type of regulation. And that created really a case worldwide, because we obtained the fact that through this legislation, we changed so much and so quickly the situation in Italy, up to the point that after a few years, we became, from being one of the least or the less the performer around the world, to one of the first, fourth or fifth around the world in terms of this indicator. Meaning that we really we have been really effective in finding a way of changing quite rapidly, or very rapidly, a situation that was considered unmovable in some cases. And this became such an important case study for the European countries, that after a while, the European Commission, that has been stuck for many years on a proposal, even before that we started discussing our own proposal in the Italian Parliament, the European Commission decided to move in the same direction, because we collected so many data to prove that our initiative has been so successful, and that really started and helped to create changes also elsewhere. It's just to conclude, we cannot say that we completely changed the entire society for the better, because there are still many areas where things need to be fixed, as Federiga just mentioned before, and as I mentioned before, laws and regulation are not the only tools that we can use to fix this situation. Still, what I've learned, and the message that I want to deliver also to you, is the fact that also in places such as Italy, where the situation seems to be unmovable, unchangeable, there are ways with building up the right environment, and working with the right stakeholders, and at the end, through some action, you can obtain a great impact. And I think that this is the best message to deliver, that can be applied really in every field, including the sport where we are talking about. I'm very curious to listen to my co-panelists. Thank you very much.
Okay,
So I'm next. Okay. So I would like to thank you for the opportunity to speak about this research we did together with this EWAS project. As Federiga told you, I'm coming from the Science and Research Center, Institute for Kinesiology Research from Koper, from Slovenia. And what I would like to share with you today, it's okay? You hear me? No? Oh. Maybe.
Now it works. Okay, it wasn't done.
So it
Go.
works. Okay. So what I would like to share is some research we did. It was a survey. Can you just So it's a survey about a woman and alpine skiing coaching, and we are research why are they coming to this let's say professional as a coach, or why are they quitting, and why what's the main obstacle, what is the joy, and so on. Because let's say from the background, we know all that women are underrepresented in coaching and leadership, especially in the Alpine skiing. Why is that? Because a lot of reasons we're going to speak up. One of the, I will do this. So one of the that's shiny example that's now when this Olympics is starting Fabio, which is the head coach of Kinesiology, and it could be our let's say role model, and I hope it will change also because of her. But anyway, why are so many barriers? We did a research, which was, let's say, sorry, okay. Let's say what was our survey overview. We did the survey in 2024, from April to July, and that was 240 completed responses. And the survey was not so long way. It was in English, and it took about 10 minutes to participate. So let's say what was sample profiles. Majority of respondents, female respondents, were aged from 26 to 45. That's mean 60% of this. And what was a little bit surprise for me, it was that the level of education level was pretty high if we compare to the male. So 71 holds bachelor or master degree, and 12% of them hold also PhD. So it was kind of regarding the relationships, personal relationships, there were 73 of them in a long or either married or in the long-term relationship, and 37% of them were parents. Okay, so coaching background, 55, more than half was Alpine coach level 2, which is the from our background is one of the highest one, which mean and 98% of them were coaching Alpine skiing, and most of all were ex-racers, so they were athletes before they entered to coach, and 37% of coaching from 1 to 5 years. So it was a short term of coaching. And what about the employment status of these coaches? 45% were full-time and 49 part-time. And there was a short percentage which was like voluntary on basis. And what was the just the one 80% of coach was a coach on the club level. That's mean low level of coach from the coach perspective, and mostly coaching young athletes. So this is the reality. So
and also take into consideration that 240 full respondents for a community as small as Alpine skiing. It's a huge turnout. It means really the majority of the coaches don't respond.
So probably I think the data is really representative.
Yeah.
So what was the motivation to coach? Becoming a role model was the highest one, and helping female athletes. What was not surprising, that was prestige or pay was not driven as a big motivation, and also was the same what women enjoy most. they mostly join because they are coaching pays them happy. It was challenging for them, interesting, fun, and exciting, and also here also show that payment and prestige were not the key motivators. And so what was the main reason for quitting? A lack of financial incentives, too little time with the family, discriminatory praxis, which means that they are in the boys club, they feel they are not so, they wanted to be a top level coach, and increased time demands because there are a lot number also mothers. Reason to stay, or if they could return to this, it will be the most reason, better salary, then better work-life balance, supportive environment, and job security, and improved condition for working. Okay. And what was the major obstacle? So the major obstacle, they put lack of support system, what we already mentioned, and lack of role models, because, and also this white club culture, because you need to know that on the white is it was Likert scale, and 5 grades was the highest one. So they have to choose a lot between, they can answer 2 or 3, what was the most reason for them. That's why the scale is the beta as such. So nature of coaching obstacles, so lack of promotion opportunities. So they are not they can upgrade their career through the years of coaching. Unfavorable working hours. We can assume that if you coach in the national team, you are away from home at least 150 days. That's the problem, and they feel also pressure to win. The pressure from the club, from the sponsors, etc., and also from the parents, etc. We can discuss about that. And professional issues, as I mentioned, financial, it's low salary, that was most issue, and lack of job security, because they are more or less, they are kind of half time for the season, they are hired for the season, and they search for the others. Probably, I assume that it's the same problem also for the men, but you know, we are here to talk about women. Okay. So we have also open questions, and so we put together and we can have these key teams for comments. That's our we put it together in the 5 different levels, 5 different categories. This is sexism and limited advancement, payment inequality and financial insecurity, poor work environment and work-life and health challenges, and systematic governance issues. I can just, if I go into this more detail, as a gender domination and sexism, there was some quotes that that women face limitation in professional growth and are often confined to coaching younger children, but was also showed in our research. So from the perception of ability, male coaches are considered superior regardless of results. So that was also one of the reasons. And also lack of female role models in the field. That was also the reason. So from this, I already said this. So the changes. So from the conclusion, this was the just briefly go briefly with this research. So we can conclude from the data that women face systematic professional and personal challenges. From their perspective of coaching, there is still gender bias and lack of growth opportunities, and also probably as the same for the men, salary and job security are critical for retention. And so the strategy, what we what we can propose is just to fight and let's say promote and combat gender bias through training, to be more competent, provide mentorships, and enable professional development, ensure goodwill payment, and it's like a promotion pathways to can promote their career, and support work-life balance policies and increase visibility of female role models. This is the point. So this is from my side. Maybe if you would like to add something.
No, just as I said, it was for the few for the very low number of people that we have coaching, female coaches, the number was huge. The response that we had. I mean, at the very least, 1 in 2 responded. At the very least, I think it's more. And we have been investing hugely on development, and I think there is a long way to go, because you know the main problem is the culture. But we will hear from Sara and Sophia from the ground. Here you go, Sara.
Buongiorno, everybody. Good morning. It's a pleasure to be with you, and perhaps to give you an insight from the inside, having worked at the International Ski and Snowboard Federation for 26 years, and 22 of them as the Secretary General.
This one is better. So,
Perhaps I give you a little bit of context and background as well, because I think it relates to a pathway, which is one of the issues that our co-panelists have also presented as being challenges. That I've been involved in the ski industry since I took up ski racing on a full-time, on a professional basis, which was at just turned 16 years old. And I saw back at this time, it wasn't possible to continue an education parallel to being a ski racer. Coming from the United Kingdom, it's not like you're living in Italy and you're living in the mountains, in the Alps, and you can train in the morning and study in the afternoon. There was no online possibility in things. But I approached the local ski shop that we actually had near to where I lived in London, and they had just begun an import and distribution agency of bringing in ski equipment and winter sports equipment from all over the world. And they were very happy that I could join them as an apprentice. And so I was involved within the ski industry from 16 years old throughout my ski racing career for more than 8 years. And I also learned about running a business. There were 2 directors who were the directors of the business, and there was me, and I was doing the work, of course. So it was a great experience and a unique opportunity. But of course, I was then already used to working in an environment where there were no other women. We were just 3 people. But then in the other parts of the ski industry that I connected with, other importers, manufacturers, and agencies, also all of the ski shops that we were selling to, there were very, very few women involved. And when I was competing, well, I think this is a very relevant point for the discussion when it comes to skiing and snow sports, is actually, it's a pretty balanced sport. And the number of participants are really pretty equal. And when you look, even just reflecting the last 2 weeks, who has really had the attention? I mean, in Italy, you know, there is so much celebration around the female stars from these games, both in skiing and in the other winter sports. So as a sport, as practitioners, it's very much a balanced sport. And I always never understood, actually, within, especially working longer and longer within the sport, why isn't it represented by its constituents? Because that is very important in all areas of society. If you have people who are not constituents talking about it, making rules, making decisions, but they actually don't have really the deep knowledge, then something isn't working. When it's, of course, possible to do that. It just needs to happen. And so I'm going to be part of making that happen. And really, that's what I had the opportunity to do. So after my ski racing career and having worked parallel in the industry, I set up my own company. I worked a lot within the ski industry and within doing different projects, but all within snow sports. And I was co-managing my the English junior ski team. The then national body, the FISI of the United Kingdom, the British Ski Federation, was given the mandate that they had to set up a professional organisation. Until then, the sport had been run, like in still many sports, on a very much voluntary basis. And they approached me to take on the role of being the Alpine skiing director. And let's say it's a long discussion, but I did. I took it on. I worked then within this new organisation, and we got 3 men in the top 30 in downhill within 2 years, and 2 women in the top 30 in slalom and in combined, or top 80 combined actually. So we got to a very good level pretty quickly, and I was part of the World Cup circuit, attending a lot of competitions, FIS events, calendar meetings, congress, and so on during my 4 years there, and really learned the inside of the sport, the leadership, and making the very good relations across the international network. And I really was the only woman involved at this level. And I had many opportunities also to officiate in competition juries and so on, because coming from Great Britain, you generally have athletes who are competing quite near the end. So you're on the slope anyway. And so it worked conveniently for everybody, but was a very good education in that area. And in the beginning of the 1990s, FIS began to professionalize its organisation of the competitions, so that instead of having volunteer technical delegates like you have in most international competitions, who were responsible and took the responsibility for officiating the competitions at World Cup level, they said, no, we have to have professionals to do this. So it's consistent across the whole season, and this is what they did. And quite quickly, within 2 to 3 years, they realised, perhaps we need to extend this also to have a qualification level for the World Cup. Otherwise, the sport will just go off on its own and disappear from the grassroots and from the lower levels and have no pathway to get there. And so they appointed a coordinator for the Continental Cup Series to set up a qualification system. And I applied and was was given the role. So I came into another completely new position to start again, and we set up the 5 Continental Cup series existed, but very different structures, different regulations, different levels. So we harmonized those rules where it was relevant and possible, and had differences in Europe where it's much bigger, in North America as well, and then in the 3 smaller cups. So there was a great opportunity for me as a woman. Let's say when I joined the International Federation, there were many more challenges insofar as being accepted. Because whilst I had the opportunity to meet a lot of responsible people during 4 years leading the British teams, and had shown my competence to do the position, I wasn't being appointed because I was a woman. I was being appointed because I could do the job. And I really felt that. But there were many other people who I hadn't met, and they were, really? A woman and from Great Britain? You can't be serious. So this was quite an interesting situation, but actually, you know, I was an athlete, I was a competitor, and I actually relished that challenge and thought, no, this is a great opportunity because I know I can do the job. So I will have that opportunity. And actually, when I'm doing it well, then that will be reflected. But okay, I can't afford any mistakes. One mistake and it's, well, what do you expect? It's a stupid woman and she comes from doing the man's job and she doesn't even come from a ski country. But I guess I must have done things quite well. First of all, we have within the Continental Cup series that still exists 30 years later, many of the same regulations, and the important regulations, which is there is a pathway for athletes from Continental Cup to World Cup with fixed starting places for the whole next season. And this we put in place back then. So it's a testimony to the fact that, okay, it works. It wasn't necessary to change it. But then after doing this position again, 4 years, Olympic cycle, the then Secretary General, he became the president. And he had discussed with some of the council members, I guess, what do you think of the possibility that Sarah takes on that role? And he must have had a quite positive reaction because I was appointed. But again, another step in, whoa, maybe we need to be a bit careful here. It's our first woman in a leadership position. Management, this was one thing, and Continental Cup, who really notices, it's not such a big deal, it's not in the spotlight, it's okay, you know, fine, and we can tick a box because we have a woman doing that job. And another nation, because at that time it was really only very much Swiss and Central Europe, 1 or 2 others was a very small network. And so they appointed me as the secretary, well, first of all, as the director. They gave me the title of FIS director, but I did all the same work of the Secretary General, all the same responsibilities, and yeah, basically dealing with everything that the elected officials don't want to deal with. So all the problems land on your desk. And then after 2 years, I was also given the title, the Secretary General. Nothing changed. Still the same responsibilities, the same salary, and on we go. And I had that role for 22 years. When I began, there were no other women in leadership positions, not only not within FIS, but in other international federations, and also in our own national associations, very, very few. But you know, these were different times, and Federiga is talking about a time when she was involved in skiing 30 years ago. I didn't see it being a huge issue because that's how it was then. You didn't question it. It's just, okay, so I'm competent and able to do the job. So I have that position. And I guess my understanding back then was, well, other women don't want to, they're not interested. That's why there aren't any others, because, yeah, I was traveling 250 days a year. You know, when I was running the Continental Cups, I didn't see summer for 4.5 consecutive winters, which I loved, and was tremendous. But you have to accept that. So I didn't see it, again, as unusual and a problem, but I did see, but actually, our sport, you know, it really is represented, has a wide representation, it is diverse, and it should be represented by and supported and governed by people who are participating. So in this role, I can work as a kind of a role model and show that it's not only possible for women to be in this position, but it's interesting and there are opportunities. But let's say it isn't then everything that can be changed to suit your circumstances. It does involve traveling. It does involve a certain physical work as well. And that's part of the job. You have to accept that part as well. But it's not impossible for you to also accept those conditions. You have to organize yourself and make decisions about your life. And that's the same in many different professions. In English, we have an expression, you can't always have the cake and eat it. You have to make some adjustments to how you're going to be able to eat the cake. Yeah, so I think maybe I can come back later on to some of the things that I tried to implement within FIS. Now, you have to imagine at this time, it's a council, it's known in some federations as an executive board. I was in my early 30s, I was less than half the age of everybody. And the mentality was, if it isn't broken, we don't need to fix it. Now, this is quite different, of course, to the sport and society where even 30 years ago, where things didn't go so fast, they still needed to evolve on a continual and a regular basis in order to stay relevant, to be interesting, to be attractive for the media, for the public, for the athletes. And there I had to be quite careful. You had to realize quite quickly, there are some battles that we really need to win, but there are other battles that maybe it's not worth the fight. So let's try to build up the tactics and find the way. And it took a couple of years to learn that, but then I think we succeeded in quite a good way in some areas, and there are still some open areas. But I think I can come back to some of those problems, so those opportunities and those successes and failures. But just to give you a little bit of context to my pathway into the sport and how the situation was.
Thank you.
Sophia, you ready? You have to unmute. Okay, here you go.
Can you hear me now? Hello, everybody. Thank you for inviting me. I'm Sophia Gritsis. I come from Greece, a small country according to the ski magnitude. I was very lucky to be half French and half Greek, but I always worked for the Greek government and sports development. My career started as an athlete for 10 years. I was selected, but I didn't go for the Olympics of Lake Placid. I didn't go because I didn't participate because the women's village was too far away from the men's village, and so they preferred for me not to go as a woman, and in my place to take another man. So that's how my experience started, that I have to do something about all this discrimination. And after that, I became a coach. I was a national coach. After the club's coach, I was a national coach. Then I was heading all the coaches of my national ski association to make 4 years development plans for cross country, for and biathlon and alpine skiing. I participated as a coach in Albertville. I was coaching the girls, the ladies, and the same year or the year before, I don't remember exactly, I was chief of delegation for a world championship in Zalbach, Hinterglemm. The whole thing I learned after that, I was a professor at the University of Sports, teaching, producing coaches, men and women. And after that, I joined the FIS in some youth and children committees, ladies committees, and now I take care of Paralympics for Greece. I'm a president of my club, and I'm very happy for that. Athens ski team. From what I have understood all these years is that you need, as a man or a woman, you need to be multi-skilled. That is, you need to go hands on deck and have the knowledge for that to can move on snow with a pertinent way, and also have a proper education to manage situations. When I started, I was the only woman in Greece taking care of a high-level sport position, and now have produced a lot of ladies working on the job as trainers, and as also I saw in the presentation, they're mostly taking care of under 14 kind of age for trainers. It's a demanding job, but I think we're getting there. Now the laws have changed in Greece and in whole Europe. In the board of directors, we have to have 35% of women on board, and that stands for clubs, sporting clubs, and also for National Federation for Sports. And that's a great job that, for instance, all these people that have been working on same opportunities and sexism, and have done a great job. And I thank them for that. And I'm working on that branch, let's say now. I'm working closely with Federiga, with European programs for empowering women. And we are developing on our, let's say, where I come from, let's say from Greece, we're working on developing skiing and on a higher level. I think we do a great job. I don't want to keep you more. I can give you a funny example of one thing I had to do in Hinterglemm. One of my jobs at that World Championship was to communicate with all the sponsors we had invited in a pool meeting in Greece, to communicate with them at the end of the race. And I couldn't get an appointment. I had seen everybody but one, and I couldn't meet with him. Like he never had time, and for me, and coming from Greece and being a girl and all this. So I pushed him hard to get this appointment, and he gave me an appointment at the swimming pool. So I went. I went from Hinterglemm to Saalbach to go and wear my swimsuit, and I dressed up again with my ski clothes and went to the swimming pool. I swam near him, and after that, with our towels, we had a meeting. So that I did get my job done, and okay, that's funny to talk about it, but I think that if I didn't do that, haven't done that, I would never got the meeting with the guy. So things have changed now, and I thank all these wonderful ladies and gentlemen that have worked for that. Thank you very much for having me. And that's it. I'm open for any questions you want, or otherwise I'll be part of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Sophia. And we are now opening the floor for questions and comments. If someone wants to react to each other, that's good as well. And for people following remotely, you can either raise your question, use the Q&A, use the chat, or I can bring you to screen. So you have a choice. And I'm trying to show.
Can I start with the first question?
Who has
Can I?
question? Yes, I'll check you.
So my question is the following one. Since I'm a social scientist, so I'm interested to understand the reasons why things change over time. So what I would like to ask you, to all the panels here, could you provide us with a long-term views of how things have changed over time, in terms of course, gender representations in different roles, and why do you think those things have changed? So let me be precise, a bit more precise here. Sasha has presented the results from your analysis there, and you have pointed out a bunch of issues, the role of, the importance of role models, and we do have here 2 role models, okay, that have that have testified, so given testimony about their activities, and I wonder whether you can tell us about to what extent you think that actually might have an impact over time on the role of women. If you really inspires new generations, how are new generation doing in terms of now being a dominant, more present, more important role into sport representation, but in society, generally speaking? And second question is, so you as a role model, that's the first question. And second is, the question is, do rules have an impact? Okay, because we have the representation from Alessia on the importance of changing the rules. Rules are formal rules, but there are sometimes informal rules that do play a major role. Do they matter? Have they mattered over time? So generally speaking, it's a consideration about how things have changed, whether they have changed, because they have changed undoubtedly. We do have data for that, but why do you think it's been the case? And probably also a bit of a consideration of where we should go in terms of the future representation for the new generations in terms of the roles they have in these activities. I don't know who can start first, but I think, I don't know, we can move on with the role models first, okay? The role models, and then also the legislators. And
No, the role. Wait, just one sec.
Okay.
Sophia, try to get out once to go on the background again, because I can't show the other speakers. I don't know what is going on. Close your mic, Sophia. It's closed. I don't know. Okay, Alec, go ahead. I have no idea what this is. Go.
You just have to change the view.
Yeah, I'm trying. I'm trying to change the view. I'm on gallery. Try, Alex, try to speak and see if it goes
No,
back.
Sarah is done.
Okay, Sarah, go.
Yeah, I maybe like to connect that to a couple of points that I wanted to bring up. But as I already alluded to, it is logical and important that the sector is represented by the people who it concerns. And consequently, I understood that actually I have a certain responsibility here to be a role model and to show that, hey, you know, this is achievable, it's possible, and you can do it. And it's an interesting work to get involved with. So yeah, I realize that, and I mean, it has
The
changed.
new generations, are being influenced by you or not?
I don't know, you have to ask them. But
What is your
look,
feeling?
well, there are many more of them, so let's say yes. For example, as Secretary General, this I know for a fact.
Okay.
Within the other winter sport federations, there are 7 on the Olympic program. Now 8 here in Milano with the very successful first edition of ski mountaineering, where I was present on Saturday, was excellent. Yeah, I participated in my first couple of meetings, and within 5 years, when their Secretary Generals in, at that time, biathlon, bobsleigh, and one other, when they retired, they appointed women. So that was a clear signal. They said, yeah, we saw you could do, you're doing a great job, and it brings a different dynamic and other perspectives, and it's good for the federation. And we want to encourage women participants and being involved in our sport. So that's what we've done. So yeah, that was a very clear example that it was the case. Unfortunately, that sort of cycle has changed a little bit. One of them even elected a female president in curling, who served her 2-year term. But yeah, at the moment now, there's only one of the Secretary Generals of the 8 winter sport federations who's a woman, no presidents. When I took on the role of Secretary General, we didn't have an athletes commission. And that was a battle that I was pretty keen to win. And took not that long, but we were able to put in place an athletes commission, and the first chair was a woman, Pernilla Wiberg, who's now also chairing the World Olympians Association, and I met her yesterday. So a very successful Alpine skier. But it took about 5 or 6 years for the Athletes Commission to be represented on the council of the federation. But then quite quickly, already we could have one representative of each gender from the Athletes Commission. And that became kind of standard. And so that was very good. And that was through regulation. But as soon as it had happened, you didn't need the regulation, you know what I mean? Because it was successful and because you didn't think to question it. Well, of course, you know, there has to be a boy and a girl. And can give you some other good sort of examples like that of using a regulation where it then just became really totally logical. And it was with adapting the system for financial support for the national associations. So at FIS, we were able to implement a very good and generous financial support to be paid to the national associations from the income generated at FIS, but also from cost savings we could make, so that where possible, you know, a large amount could be distributed. So the system that had been in place before was very basic. It was consisted of how many athletes participated in the World Championships, because many years ago, it was necessary to pay all of your own expenses to go to the championships, accommodation and travel and so on. And we were able to implement a change quite quickly so that the organisers cover the accommodation. So then that wasn't so necessary that they needed, that was the reason to pay the financial support. And we changed the system. It took a long time for this, but it was based on different factors, but all relative to participation. So one was the representation of your nation in different FIS disciplines. You get 1 point if you had male athletes and 1 point for female athletes. So 6 Olympic disciplines, you could get up to 12 points. And then same, organising competitions in the different FIS disciplines. You could get points for organising those competitions. And ultimately, then the calculation was made using these factors, and still something based on participation in World Championships, but much smaller amount, and then a basic share for everybody. So it was based on these key factors, and then it was just totally logical. You know, of course, that's how it's based. And because the nations who are most active should be the ones who are rewarded, and should be the ones. And it was a great incentive and an encouragement for many nations to say, well, we hadn't thought of having a cross-country team, but what's to stop us? And so many nations were able to evolve their activities, and there was a financial incentive for it. So I think a small practical example.
No, I just wanted to add something, some considerations also, listening to this very complete and very in the field experience, because I am even if I've been a lawmaker, I am deeply convinced that we can fix, and I continue to stress on that point, we cannot fix everything through regulations. And things need to be sustainable in the long term, as you correctly put it, in the sense that regulation is really one part of the entire picture. And there's no one-size-fits-all order through which you need to move, in the sense that sometimes is the cultural change or having role model or having, so there's different orders of the pieces that you have to put in place. But the sustainability is to the addition of all the pieces that influences one another, and somehow one piece of the puzzle implement the other and reinforce the other, and vice versa. And this is the only good recipe that I have seen so far in many different examples, in many different fields. And I can put in the list for sure regulation, for sure culture, for sure economic sustainability, but for sure also something someone mentioned before, also practical conditions, organization, and all these things together, actions together, need to be bear in mind when you want something to change, and something to change for the long term. Because if you do not know and do not are aware of the fact that you have a toolkit of instruments that you can use, perhaps you can change things for a short period, but then the risk of going backward is always there, as I told before. So it's really important that you continuously move the things, you continuously use all the instruments that you have in your toolkit, because that's the only way through which you can reiterate a practice to a point when it becomes natural. So that's my comment.
Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. I just really agree with my previous colleagues, Sarah and Sylvia. And I really do believe that all those movements, all those, such as our project is, it's one key for development. Because if we don't do anything, if we just be silent or not put forward the problems or obstacles or what should be done and it's not, I think the change is not here. So this is my role, and what we also see, and we can confirm some things that we already know from our research, and there is some gaps also which we could put forward. So this is the point.
And also, I think I want to say something. It's not that having women at the lead, it's necessary. The women necessarily lead better, right? For instance, we did research on women in foreign policy. The hypothesis was that with women at the helm in foreign policy, there would be a better foreign policy, whatever better means. And the empirical evidence actually showed us that that was not true, that women did not make a difference in foreign policy. Right? We ended up not publishing the book. It's still something, I still have a contract. I still haven't gone back to that because it was so depressing to me. But the question is whether the women did not make a difference because they had to cope with the male environment and act like men. Because every time you do not act like men, you get sanctioned. I give you one sad example if you want. This summer I was in Chile with my son. The conditions were extremely dangerous. And we had the race and they had set the course and they asked the coaches to go and sleep the night before the race. So I go and sleep and I see there is this wooden fence really near, there are rocks and a very tiny net. So before a race, you have what is called the TCM, team captain meeting. So I go to the TCM and they said, there is no conditions to race. This is dangerous. And all the male coaches were like, and I said, at the very least, we need to lower the start because the start is so narrow, it's so dangerous. And all the male coaches like, oh, but then we don't do points in skiing. We have a system with points. The less you have, the better you are. Oh, we don't do points. And I said, well, no, I took a video. Something happens, I have a record. I want it in the minutes that I said that this is dangerous, right? So next morning, the TD, the technical director, decides to lower the start, right? And it was still very sketchy. So I told my son, you know what, you go slow and you go out. It's not worth to get hurt, right? And then exactly 1 month afterwards, in a training in the same place, a member of a national team died, right? He probably hit something, lost control, went straight into the nets, into the wooden fence, brought them down and died basically on the spot, even if it took. And then I had a discussion because I posted, because at the beginning they said, oh, the guy made a mistake. I said, no, there's no condition for slopes, right? So I posted and I had a discussion. So just to say that often the women, they may be not better at their job, but they're often the one who actually see the problems and talk about the problems and try to change. And in either way, even if we are not better, we need to be given the chance to have equal chances, right? And maybe by being at the leadership for a longer time, we will do better, but it is, at least when it comes to alpine skiing, the environment is still very much male dominated. It's very much misogynous, with jokes of every sort. Sarah, I think you want to say something.
I think it's especially relevant to talk about some initiatives that the International Olympic Committee have taken here around the Olympics, which have been quite important, and they took quite a few years ago, actually. It's about 6 to 8 years now. They said, they recognized that women's competitions and really across the games were not being presented in an equal way, in a balanced way. Let's also put it like that. And that there would be really clear actions to change it. And they did. And when you look at the scheduling now, there was very classic scheduling that the competitions, the men's competition would always be the last one, always have the best time, or the first one, whichever was sort of the highest profile, that one would always be for the men, and then they would fit the women's competition around. That's totally changed. And now that is very much balanced. It alternates. Sometimes that's a men's competition, sometimes that's a women's competition. But they took a lot of action there. They also have really gone through their media coverage in a very systematic way to make sure that that's balanced in terms of the use of photos, the use of articles, and to have a good balance. Of course, with the different sports and disciplines, but also with the genders. And that has been a great sort of direction given also to the federations as well. And we took the initiative to neutralize all of the rule books. So that meant in the rule books were basically drafted in German to a large extent, and used the formats that the male format, and then there was a footnote or at the beginning to say where the male is used, this also applies to female. But it was not very difficult actually to change those rules, even without AI. But of course, it was still with search and replace. But there were 70 different publications that were changed, and not so difficult. Where instead of using he, you would use the noun, which would say the athlete or the coach or the technical delegate, and just make it neutral. And instead of using him or that, you can use they, and all across all of the rule books. So it was a good exercise. Now they are, I mean, it's just make these gender neutral, and off they go, easy. But was a good exercise. And then afterwards, of course, it's not it's like, yeah, of course, it's fine. And in many respects, it also reads better when you're using more nouns to say, oh, you mean the athlete? Okay, and so this was good. And I'm just checking the other, yeah. So a couple of also initiatives where we did use regulations, and this I haven't been involved the last 5 years, but as I understand, it's not really the case anymore. But we put in place regulations for the committees, which I think is also what Federiga is mentioning when it comes to kind of those groups who are leading the technical committees. They have a certain responsibility. There were no female chairs except of the women's committee, kind of logically. But in any of the other important technical committees, and so that was changed. and there were several who were put in place. But then we put in place a regulation that there had to be gender balance with either the chair or the vice chair. So to have that balance, and we did that. And then the next step was to put in place, well, over a period of 5 years, let's start with 30% of the committee members are of the other gender. And there was a comment at one of the council meetings, yeah, but you know, this is going to take time, and we need to make sure that the women who are in the committees are competent. It's like, right. And how about men? Do they have to be? So
Typical.
I leave that one with you.
Sophia is still there.
I think we lost Sophia.
We lost Sophia. Are there any questions from the audience that you'd like to ask? Anything that you would like to ask?
Quiet. We're not eating here.
No, I have a last question, Silva. Do you have something you want to ask? Any curiosity? So because we're heading toward the conclusion, so but I do have a question. So
Yes, go ahead.
Is there still something, is there still something that really frustrates you? What is it? You know, we're talking about, you know, we picture a nice development in terms of gender opportunity, gender equality. So the picture that we have seen here is a picture of improvement. But is there still something that really frustrates you as a lawmaker, as a politician, as a practitioner, that still now you say, come on, we have to change these things? Because as you rightly said, things now are logical, but they were clearly not logical 20 years ago, because that seems to be logical. But is there something now, still now, that really frustrates you, that you like to change as politician, lawmaker, practitioner, academic, and so on and so forth? So just tell us something in terms of future challenges.
That's a good question.
It is very difficult in international sport when it is you know, made up of national representatives who are nevertheless looking at the big picture. So what's best for the sport? And to have that balance to represent what's best for your nation and what's best for the sport is, you know, it can be contradictory, and that is very difficult, you know, because it might be better for the sport, for example, to have less competitions or to structure the calendar in such a way so that they are bunched in, they are grouped in regions or in different events. But it might mean that, well, it's not possible to be able to fit that event in my country. That's we've always done. So finding those solutions. So to find that balance between representing the people who have elected you and who have positioned you for that position, and then expect that you are representing their best interests because that is your duty. Nevertheless, from an international perspective, what's best for the sport and for the athletes may not be the same solution. So
what does frustrate you as a women leader? I mean,
okay,
that was my
general.
Okay, point. That's my question is about as a women leader. Is there something that still, you know, find it extremely frustrating about how things are now in your sector?
I have to think about it, actually. That's a little bit difficult, you know, because I can't honestly say that now, well, you are considered, as a woman, you are considered immediately likely to be less competent. I don't think that exists anymore. Maybe in some countries and some places, Federiga thinks it does, but I don't personally feel that myself. I mean, you know, I can give you some examples now. In British sports, the Minister of Sport is a woman. The President of the British Olympic Association is a woman. The President of the English Football Association, men and women, is a woman. And no one has been elected because they're a woman. It's because they have proven themselves, they have shown themselves to be the right people, the right person, have the right qualities to be competent. Those are some British examples, but then the new president of the World Olympians Association is a woman, former Alpine skier. Kirsty Coventry is, of course. So I can't honestly say that I feel that we're coming into this saying, oh, it's about time we elected a woman. I feel that these elections, both international and the national ones that I see, have been elected because they were the right people. And hopefully that can serve as a role model and as a kind of a vision that, okay, well, if we're good enough to lead those organizations, you know, how about across the board as well, when it comes to further management positions and other leadership positions, and then down at the grassroots and in coaching roles and things as well. So yeah, you know, coaching is, I do think it's still one where there's a long way to go and needs a lot of help and a lot of support, but also from the perspective of the women, there needs to be a certain understanding that there are factors involved in coaching that the challenges that you evaluated in your study and things, that you have to say, okay, if that's what I want to do, you know, it is perhaps less well paid than some other professions that I could go into, but will it give me more satisfaction? Is it more interesting? It's where I come from. It's what I like to do. These are my people. You know, as you say, not everything has to be about the law, but then also not everything has to be about kind of the remuneration as well. There can be other factors that you see as valuable and rich and rewarding to the reason for doing that position.
Alan.
Yeah.
Most closely.
No, we have to admit that also in Italy that lacks a lot of changes in many aspect of the economic and social life. In the leadership roles, we have seen that many things changed, and we have seen first election of many positions, both in the political area and in other areas such as deans of universities. So we have seen and we can demonstrate that at the top level things changed, and we cannot see that as something that could change in the near future, because as we have seen that women in that position are not creating a complete disaster, so things start to become natural. My worry, my bigger concern is the fact that even if we have such changes in this very top leadership position, we are not witnessing a bigger change in the middle leadership level of the economy and society. And since our life is sustained by this middle and widespread leadership, my question is, if we are not, we have not changed at the very top level because it's so visible, without changing the conditions that create the opportunities for the middle leadership to stay there. And I'm not so sure that changing this very top level is really creating the cascading for the other roles if we do not intervene in other ways. And when I see that the chat for the schools are still chat for the moms, then my question is that we are not really giving the opportunities for normal people, not because the other ones are not normal people, but for people that are not reaching the very, very top leadership to have the ambition to reach the middle leadership roles that are also the pipeline, to create the bigger pipeline, to have the succession and to create the condition to become not only culturally, but also practically normal, that we have an exchange and a diversity in all the leadership roles.
I can give if I can give my answer. On the Hill, there are two things that frustrate me. First, that as research shows, women are working with little kids. I usually attend international competition with older people, and I'm usually the only one. Maybe there is another one from Trumplet, but otherwise there is no women. And as I said, it really bugs me that I'm the mom. For God's sake, if dad's coaches are coaches, so am I. All right. And I think it's a question of misrespect. In general terms, it's a culture thing. If you are assertive as a woman, you are seen, or outspoken, you are seen as aggressive, and that is negative. If you're aggressive as a man, that is okay and very cool. And speaking of competencies, yes, there are women who are at the top, as Alice says, less in the middle ranks, but the reality is that usually women have to be overqualified as compared to men to get the same position, right? And so we're still a long way. What worries me is people your age. I see my students, I see my female students are still very shy, are still even in the US, are still, well, especially the Europeans, I have to say, the Europeans did that, but are still afraid to be assertive. I still think there is a lot of change in the cultures that need to be done. And for instance, in the US, I mean, there are positive, even in skiing, the decision was taken that they wanted more female TDs. They wanted more coaches at the FIS level, and they implemented policies at USSA to do that. Right? So you can change, but it really needs a constant effort. It's tiring, but the moment you stop, you're lost. Inside.
Well, I think maybe just explain the point of the research, not our research, but from the research point. I think the great move ahead has been this action plan, gender equality plan, which every research institution needs to have, because otherwise cannot apply for Horizon project. This is one case which is okay, which is super, because everybody needs to do the yearly plan and implement the activities towards equality, gender equality. But on the other way, what concerns, let's say, I'm speaking for the point from Slovenia, is that going into the research, the women are maybe in the favorized, more favorable to go into the academics. So why? Because of the payment. And that is we have in our institute, we have 4 women young researchers, more every year. And that's a little bit a problem. And speaking with our research, sometimes it's kind of, I don't know, challenging because we need to do also research on women. But biologically, women are, we are so complicated. Because I'm speaking about, because we have a kind of better study that's meant that the participants, women and were put into the bed for 3 weeks for 21 days. And that was really hard for us because the women, we have to adjust the period and everything. It was so, the hormones and everything. So I'm really sometimes concerned how can we push all those equality because we still have some variance in the, but I'm fully, let's say, full support of this equality, at least in the from this point policies, and to have equal opportunity, that's it, and to have equal opportunity to make the careers, do what we want. So, and from the field, we spoke why so many men's, not the female coaches. I think it's really also hard demanding job, to just assume that you need to have all those polls carried on and in all the conditions. It's really hard but I know they can make it, but probably it's also one stressful factor that they are not so many of. This is just from my point. No.
Okay, I think we can conclude here, also because I think it's well beyond the standard length of the lecture here. So I would like to thank the panelists for your contribution. I hope you find this seminar interesting. I think we touched many topics, interesting topics of various nature. We appreciated the development and think we are clear-eyed about the challenges before you and us as well as a man, to say. So thank you very much. Thank you very much for the panelists. I think we can conclude here. It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much. Thanks.